The day began as any other. Passengers boarded jumbo jets. There were many places to go and people to see. Around the world, planes ascended one by one, many of them heading to the United States. Roxanne and Clark Loper were eagerly returning to Texas with their newly adopted 2-year-old daughter from Russia. General Barbara Fast, Director of Intelligence for the Joint U.S.-European Command, was on her way to the Pentagon to give a briefing. A number of families were looking forward to a long-awaited Disney vacation. 38 refugees from Moldova were winging their way to a new life in America. The sky was filled with people from all over the world, of many languages and skin tones, each one with their own hopes and dreams, with their fears and disappointments. The plain people, as they would soon be called, were infants and the elderly and everyone in between. Their plans were soon to be interrupted. One commercial airliner crashed into the World Trade Center, and then another. The pilots, mid-air, received only bits and pieces of the news, but what they all heard was that U.S. airspace was closed. Flights were being diverted. Many landed at Gander International Airport in the Canadian province of Newfoundland. It was a place most of the passengers had never heard of, and it was certainly a destination none of them had chosen.
A decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. All went to their own towns to be registered. So Mary and Joseph left their home in Nazareth and went to Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house of David.
Gander was a town of about 10,000 residents. A monumental task lay before them on that September 11th. Soon, 6,600 displaced passengers and crews would enter their town. They would have only the clothes on their backs and perhaps a small carry-on bag. For security purposes, all luggage must remain in the cargo holds. A state of emergency was declared there. All hotel reservations were canceled. These hotel rooms would now be devoted to the grounded pilots and crews. Schools, fire departments, churches, and community centers were all transformed into shelters for the remaining 6,000 passengers. And residents got busy. They gathered sheets and towels from their own linen closets and even stripped their guest beds to take supplies to the shelters. The people of Gander could not offer 5-star accommodations, but they made sure every person would have a place to lay their head.
Mary and Joseph went from inn to inn, but there was no room anywhere in Bethlehem. A stable became their shelter, their pillows made of hay. With no idea how long the planes would be stranded, the residents of Gander immediately set about to make their town a home for their guests. Shelters were set up and outfitted with basic supplies. Meals were prepared, many meals. Restaurant meals, home-cooked meals, meals to accommodate every dietary need. When it was discovered that a few of their guests were Orthodox Jews, a kosher kitchen was set up for their food prep. Residents shared showers and strollers, books and blankets, tools and tents. They even opened up their homes to provide much-needed solitude for some who needed to be alone. Activities and entertainment were planned. There were games and tours of the island, pub parties, golf outings, and a Disney party for the children whose vacation had been put on hold. A sidewalk phone bank was set up so the plain people could contact family members. After all, this is before there was a phone in every pocket. Computer and television access quickly became available, and there was more. Without their luggage, many people didn't have necessary medications. So the local pharmacist and his wife worked for 42 straight hours, making calls to a dozen countries to determine the exact medication and dosage needed for each person. In the first 24 hours, pharmacists in Gander filled more than 1,000 prescriptions at no cost to their guests. And plane pets were rescued from the cargo holds of the grounded planes, and local vets cared for them. And then there were the children. There certainly were not enough toys in Gander for all these stranded children. A fire truck was sent on an emergency run to a town 55 miles away, lights flashing and sirens blaring. The truck returned with hundreds of donated toys. Eager children ran to meet the fire truck as if it were Santa's sleigh. No desire of the guest was too frivolous to be taken seriously, and no need went unmet. Every resident of Gander was single-mindedly engaged in creating a community, a home place for 6,600 strangers, many of whom became their friends. For 126 hours, the residents of Gander and nearby villages put their lives on hold. The Plain people were received and cherished, not as refugees, but as long-lost relatives.
For the young woman, weary with travel and great with child, there was a simple stable out back. In the company of a host of four-legged friends, she and her betrothed likely shared a simple meal they had brought for the journey. Perhaps they quenched their thirst from the same bucket as the animals.
The people of Gander extended remarkable hospitality, and it was risky. Remember, these were scary and uncertain days. The world was still trying to figure out what had just happened and wondering what might come next, and who could be trusted and who could not. It was in these days that the people of Gander opened their lives and their homes and their wallets to people from more than 40 different countries, people about whom they knew nothing except that they were stranded and in need. Just allowing the planes to land in the first place was a risk. What if terrorists were lying in wait on some of these flights? There was really no way to know. Yet, despite the risk, Canada moved quickly to accept the orphaned planes. The people of Gander set aside their fears. They assumed the risk of offering hospitality and created a beautiful community amongst those who were once strangers. It seems there is always fear and risk when we make space for the other.
The angel Gabriel said to Mary, "The Lord is with you. Do not be afraid." In a dream, an angel came to Joseph and said, "Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife." The shepherds keeping watch over their flock were terrified, but the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid."
O Lord, how shall we meet you? How welcome you aright. My friends, it is in these days, it is in this time and place that we have an opportunity to welcome the Christ child once again. Even now, we experience uncertainty and angst. As it was for the Plain people, this is a season of fear and displacement for too many of God's children. For many, perhaps all of us, the questions often outnumber the answers. And it is into this very particular time, into these circumstances, that the Christ child is born anew. The manger child whom we follow grew up to preach good news to the poor, to welcome the lost and the lonely, to touch the very people who were shunned by others, and to break bread with the most unlikely of companions. In this child is hope, love, and life for all. God has come to live among us full of grace and truth. Will you, will I, make space for the Christ child to dwell within us? Might the stable-born King compel us to welcome the stranger as if she were a long-lost relative. Perhaps the infant wrapped in bands of cloth can lead us to love one another as we have been loved. Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace.